that is you have to go back in time to the way it was prior to having the Number One's Leadership Institute, and see the way it was then and how we do it now, and see the difference. Before the Number One's Leadership Institute, we had a training session called the National Leadership Institute. And this occurred every year, either at convention or an off-convention year. We would go to a university and we'd hold this training. And what we found is that the amount of training that occurred as a result, and everybody in the chapter was invited to attend, but the amount of training was about 6 hours. So in the old days, the number one would be elected in March. There was no real system in place at that time to communicate who was the new number one that had replaced the old number one to the national office. So there'd be a period of time we wouldn't even know who the number one was. And then he wouldn't have any training whatsoever until August, which was when we held the National Leadership Institute. And his term is at least half, if not over half, over at that time, or the substantial parts of his term, because of the way it worked out. It was well into the term before he got any training. So, I started thinking about this from a business standpoint, and I started thinking, if we were not a fraternity, we were a franchise of restaurants. Say we franchise chicken restaurants, which happens to be one of my favorite, fried chicken's one of my favorite foods, and that's why I naturally think of chicken. But if we did it that way, we'd fail. If we didn't know who our manager was, and we didn't have any training for the managers of our restaurants, then we would fail as a business. And that's, if you apply that to Kappa Alpha, we were not seeing the success that we needed to as a result. So the laws were changed, and the Number One's Leadership was founded to address these concerns. So now we all get elected at the same time. We all come to the Number One's Leadership Institute at the same time. It's held right after the first of the year. It's an intense, approximately 3-day conference, and it's a corporate-style training. We have the best speakers that we can possibly get there, and we go through a very rigorous, very demanding 3-day course. But when you leave, you have everything that you need to do your job as the number one. You're schooled on the laws, you're schooled on chapter operations, you're schooled on the philosophy of KA, the ritual. We want to make you an expert in KA for you to go back to your chapter and lead your chapter the way that it needs to be led. One of the overriding philosophies of the Number One Leadership Institute, and this is something that I'm the most proud of, and this is something that we start telling and teaching the number ones from the time they enter that facility in North Carolina until they leave as the number one, is that we believe that you are an integral part of the management chain of the Kappa Alpha order. That nothing happens in the order, nothing happens in the chapter without the number one being there to make it happen. And we firmly believe that this is so important that the number ones understand what their role is, understand what the responsibilities are, and that they leave there knowing that they can go back into their chapter and perform that role of the number one. This is something that has never been done before in Kappa Alpha, and it's something that we're most proud of, and the Number One's Leadership Institute, as a result, is the premier training platform for everything else that we do. And honestly, other fraternities are just now catching up to this concept. We've got some people that are trying to mimic what we've done now for almost 12 years.